The man buys a watch that costs more than most people's cars. Everyone notices. The man who actually has money buys nothing that day. He sits in a room with a spreadsheet open, moving $400 into an account he will not touch for 11 years. Nobody notices that. That's the trick. That's the entire trick. Wealth, real wealth, the kind that survives a bad year, a divorce, a recession, a pandemic, doesn't announce itself. It hides inside boring decisions made years before anyone was watching. And by the time it becomes visible, by the time it becomes a watch, or a house, or a car, the actual work is already finished. So here's the uncomfortable question this video is going to sit with. If wealth is built quietly, years before it shows up, then everything you're watching on social media right now, every flex, every unboxing, every day in my life as a millionaire video is showing you the result, never the method. And that gap between what gets shown and what actually gets done is where most people lose a decade of their financial life. Let's talk about why that gap exists and what's actually happening inside it. Right now, in 2026, the average American under 35 has less purchasing power than the same age group did in 1989, even accounting for higher average incomes. Wages went up. Costs went up faster. Meanwhile, the top 1% of wealth holders in the U.S. now control roughly a third of all household wealth, a share that's been climbing steadily for 4 decades. That's not an opinion. That's Federal Reserve data. And here's the part that should bother you. That top 1% isn't mostly made up of people who look rich. A huge portion of them look completely ordinary. Thomas Stanley spent decades studying American millionaires for his research, and he found something almost insulting to our assumptions. Most of them drove used cars. Most of them lived in the same house for decades. Most of them you would never pick out of a crowd. Meanwhile, the people spending the most on visible luxury were, statistically, disproportionately in debt. So the image of wealth and the mechanics of wealth aren't just different. They are often opposites. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Every time you watch someone flex online, a small, quiet question should form in your head. Is this the cause of their wealth? Or is this what they're doing with the wealth they already quietly built somewhere else, years ago, where no camera was pointed? Let's break down what actually happens in that hidden years before period. Because it's not mysterious. It's not insider knowledge. It's 8 specific habits, and none of them are exciting enough to film. Habit 1. They separate spending identity from spending capacity. This sounds abstract, so here's the mechanism. Most people spend based on what they can access. Credit limits, loan approvals. Buy, now pay later. People building real wealth spend based on a number they've already decided in advance, usually a fixed percentage of income, set before the money even arrives. The difference isn't willpower, it's architecture. One person is reacting to what's available. The other person built a system that removes the decision entirely. Habit 2. They automate before they optimize. Here's where people get stuck. They wait to have the perfect investment strategy before they start. Rich before they looked. Rich people did the opposite. They set up automatic transfers into unglamorous index funds first, then spent years learning. The automation ran the whole time they were still figuring things out. Compounding doesn't wait for you to feel ready. $1 invested at 25 at an average 7% return becomes roughly 11 times its value by 65. The same dollar invested at 35 becomes about half that. 10 years of hesitation isn't a small delay. It's the single most expensive decision most people never realize they made. Habit 3. They treat debt like a categorized substance, not a single thing. There's good debt and bad debt, and the confusion between them quietly bankrupts people. Debt that buys you an asset which appreciates or generates income is a tool. Debt that buys you a depreciating object to look a certain way is a leak. The house in most cases can be the first. The financed watch is almost always the second. People building wealth aren't debt-free zealots. They're debt selective. Habit 4. They buy time before they buy comfort. This one's counterintuitive. Somebody with real capital will often live below their means for years, specifically so they can preserve flexibility, savings that let them leave a bad job, negotiate harder, or wait out a bad market instead of panic selling. Comfort spending locks you into needing your current income forever. Buying time buys you options, and options in finance and in life are quietly the most valuable thing money can purchase. Habit 5. They let assets fund lifestyle, not income. Here's the mechanism most people never get taught. Spending your paycheck is spending labor. Spending returns from investments is spending money that already made more money without you working an extra hour. The visible difference between these two people can look identical from the outside. Same car, same neighborhood. The invisible difference is which one runs out of runway the moment the job disappears. Habit 6. They treat taxes as a design problem, not a punishment. This is where it gets a little uncomfortable, because it exposes something about how the system is actually built. Retirement accounts, capital gains treatment, depreciation on real estate. These aren't loopholes for the ultra-wealthy. They're publicly available structures that reward specific behaviors, mainly long-term holding and delayed consumption. The people who look rich too early usually paid full retail tax rates on everything, because they never structured around the incentives. The people who built quiet wealth studied the rules the way a chess player studies the board, not to cheat, but because ignoring the rules is its own kind of tax. Habit 7. They price things in hours, not dollars. There's a habit financially secure people develop almost accidentally. They stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "How many hours of my life does this cost?" A $10 coffee isn't $10. It's however many minutes of your actual labor, after tax, that you're trading for it. This reframing doesn't make people cheap. It makes them selective. And selective, compounded over a decade, is the actual difference between two people who earned the same income but ended up in completely different financial places. Habit 8. And this is the one almost nobody talks about. They protect their downside before they chase their upside. Insurance, emergency funds, diversification. These are boring words attached to a very unboring outcome. The wealthiest people historically aren't the ones who took the biggest risks. They're the ones who survived long enough to let compounding do its slow, unglamorous work. Warren Buffett's own explanation of his success wasn't a secret formula. It was closer to this: don't lose the money and let time do most of the heavy lifting. Boring. Repeated for 60 years. That's the entire story. Now here's where the hype and the reality really split apart, and it's worth sitting in the discomfort of this for a second. Social media rewards the visible spike. A crypto win, a flip, a flex. The algorithm doesn't care about the 11 years of $400 transfers. It cares about the one dramatic moment. So an entire generation is learning about wealth from a feed that structurally cannot show them what wealth actually looks like while it's being built, because what it looks like is nothing. It looks like a Tuesday. It looks like someone doing the same unremarkable thing they did last Tuesday, and the Tuesday before that, for years, without an audience. That's not a flaw in individual people. That's a flaw in what gets rewarded with attention. The visible thing gets the views. The invisible thing gets the outcome, and most people, understandably, chase what they can see. Zoom out further, and there's a bigger, colder implication here. If wealth building genuinely requires years of invisible, unrewarded behavior, then a culture that increasingly demands instant, visible proof of success isn't just aesthetically annoying. It's actively working against the mechanism that produces real financial security. We may be raising a generation extremely fluent in looking successful and quietly falling behind in becoming it. And the wealth gap data backs this up in an uncomfortable way. It's not accelerating because rich people are getting smarter. It's accelerating partly because the habits that build wealth have gotten less visible and less socially rewarded exactly at the moment. Attention became the currency everyone is optimizing for.